Thank you for joining us again here at News Humor, where if the news doesn't make you laugh, it might make you cry. If it doesn't make you laugh or cry, it could get you really upset. Right here, I have a lawsuit. The two officers who tased these children, they sued the mayor and the chief of police. You can see here where it was filed in the Superior Court. So this is interesting. Article 9. The officers were tasked to assist other officers and as an arrest team with riot control and enforcement of a 9 p.m. curfew instituted by the mayor and the chief of police. So that's the first thing that I would like to point out, is one of the things that they're talking about in this lawsuit is that the mayor and the chief of police ordered them to go out and enforce a curfew. Now, Allegation 11 or Article 11, they're talking about how their use of force was proper, and that is how the Atlanta Police Department trained them, the State Police of Georgia, and other entities. Now, down here, number 15, it talks about 4 other officers were involved in basically the exact same activity. And they weren't let go, they weren't relieved of command, so it's kind of unfair to single out these particular officers. Now, if you've been following the channel, I've kind of been doing a thing on mayors. Talked about the one in Seattle, talked about the one in Chicago, now we're talking about this one in Atlanta. The thing that's real interesting is how she changed her tune. First, when all of the riots started over George Floyd, she told everybody to go home.
Go home. Go home.
Then, after the Rashard Brooks shooting,
I'll tell you what we don't see here. We don't see a huge police presence. Just a few police officers down on Marietta Street,
ordered the police
basically helping
to
escort
the
marchers down Marietta Street.
I'm okay
toward
with police
5
protecting
points.
protesters.
I think that's by design. You know, they've had a big
what
show
I'm not
of force,
okay with is this whole
nights,
idea that the upper levels of government, the executive branch, aka, doesn't have any liability. They claim to have sovereign immunity. Now, let me break down something about sovereign immunity for you. First off, immunity means to be exempt from public service. So if you have immunity, quit acting in the public. Don't be mayor. Don't be governor. You know, if you're not in those positions, if you don't perform public service, I would agree. You would have immunity. You would be exempt from that public service. Now, it's not just me who believes, and if you've seen the series on governmental worship, where it talks about how the government is an entity, much like a church, that desires to be worshipped, and they get this worship from the public. And the right of suffrage is public prayer together, okay? Or it's the right to suffer. I don't really care which one you pick. And it's not just me who has this opinion. Let's listen to an attorney talk about the Chaz situation over in Seattle and see what he has to say about it.
But no chance of going after the elected officials, the mayor, on a personal basis, on the basis that what they're doing so far exceeded their mandate as government officials?
That they've made it impossible to sue for anything that relates to duty to protect. They basically say there's no duty to protect unless the person's effectively in your custody. And so I think they've done too much of that and letting the cities off. It's all based on the myth that the king, that our leaders were appointed by God and thus can do nothing wrong. That's where sovereign immunity comes from.
See, he's also talking about how the government wishes to be worshipped. Maybe he should go check out the videos I have on governmental worship. Now, when you're talking about sovereign immunity, I'd just like to bring up a couple of ideas, because people don't really seem to remember the past. In 1649, I believe, King Charles I was beheaded. Okay? A king. He didn't have sovereign immunity. He got rid of Parliament because he didn't like the way they kind of put restrictions on him. The people got so fed up with it, they took him to court and they chopped off his head. Now, back with the Intolerable Acts, before this before the United States became a country, there was a situation called the Boston Massacre, where some British soldiers, in confusion, shot at a crowd of people. Do you think they got immunity? No. They stood trial for manslaughter. They were found not guilty, but they still stood trial. Think about that. The most oppressive time right before the Revolutionary War. Soldiers of the king did not have immunity from prosecution. What are we doing wrong in our society today? I have some ideas on that. I think I might have some solutions. But that'll be another video. If you like this content, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Do you think government's a god among men? I'd like to know.
Is there in law such a thing as voluntary
Peace.
manslaughter? No. A person cannot justify killing if he can, by any means, make his escape. He that commits a cruel act voluntarily is guilty of malice aforethought. And malice was very much on these prisoners' minds. By the very act of loading their muskets with powder and ball, they have proved this. They stand condemned by their own actions.
Hear, hear.
Order! I ask that you heed the words of the indictment, that the accused, not having the fear of God before their eyes, but being moved by the instigation of their own wicked hearts, did perpetrate nothing less than murder. You must pronounce them guilty.
I am for the prisoners at the bar. In the words of the Marquis of Beccaria, if by supporting the rights of mankind, I shall save from the agonies of death one unfortunate victim of tyranny or of ignorance equally fatal, his blessings will be sufficient consolation to me for the contempt of all mankind. When people are taxed without representation, they are sometimes to feel abused. And sometimes they may even rebel. But we must take care, lest, borne away by a torrent of passion, we make shipwreck of conscience. Prisoners must be judged solely upon the evidence produced against them in court and by nothing else.